Sarah Martin is an experienced theatre nurse and part of an extended family of medical professionals. But nothing could have prepared Sarah for navigating the health system after her daughter Alice began experiencing psychosis and later bipolar disorder. Dear Psychosis is Sarah's first book, and it describes not only the dramatic rescue of her unwell daughter from Turkey, but the ongoing impact of helping a loved one deal with mental illness. She is a peer ambassador for Sane Australia, and when not tackling the stigma and silence around mental illness, Sarah loves playing golf and making and baking sourdough bread. Sarah, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jess. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, and it was great. We met in person at Maggie Walters' Split launch just a few weeks ago. So I seized the opportunity to invite you on the show.
Well, I'm so glad that you grabbed me. I'm so glad to have met you too.
Yeah, it's really good. Could you please tell readers about Dear Psychosis? I have to say, as a mum, it's just really scary stuff what you went through.
Yeah, so Dear Psychosis is a story about our family and our journey with mental health. Our daughter, when she was 21, had finished her university degree and had gone overseas, as you know, a lot of kids do. She'd saved up. Yeah, she'd scrimped and saved and worked 3 jobs to get over there. And the first couple of months she was traveling with my son and his now wife, and then they left and she started traveling her travels alone. And when she got to Turkey, one Saturday I received a message from a stranger telling me that he thought that Alice was having some sort of mental health crisis. Firstly, I was like, oh my God, is Alice all right? Then I'm like, this is a scam. This is not true. We don't have mental health in our family. Alice is fine. Like, what's going on here? And then when we delved into it more, within 24 hours, my oldest son and I were on a plane to Turkey to find our girl.
My gosh.
Yeah.
And you could not use your phone for that, period that you were in the air, and you must have been thinking what awaits you and how is she? It must have been awful.
And I call it about 20 hours of blind time that we have no idea what's going on. My husband's at home in Sydney, so he has contact with this person in Istanbul, and we still don't know whether she's okay. We've spoken to her and she's ethereal, she's quiet, she's tired. It was 2:00 in the morning when we were talking to her. And is it just that she's exhausted? So I'm hoping that we get there and we find her and she goes, oh, sorry, Mum, that you're over here, all a false alarm. And, like, the money to get there became secondary. We put it all on credit card, and it was that thought goes out your mind, that it becomes insignificant to finding your child or your loved one and to bring them to safety, to get them and to find them.
You hope it would all just be a big waste of money.
Yeah, and that's it. That would have been the absolute best thing to have happened, to be honest. Oh God, and we'd talk about it for years to come, but that wasn't to be. We arrive at the airport and there's no one there. So we think it's a scam. She's not here. And then a couple of minutes later, we see this bunch of people walking towards us, and these people were Syrian refugees. They're displaced from their own home, and here they have taken our daughter under their wing and protected her when she needed it most. But they didn't need to do that. They did not need to do that. So when we get to Alice, my first look is she's got a scarf wrapped around her head. She's got a dress on that's inside out, and then she's got a skirt over the dress. She's disheveled. When she speaks, I can't hear her. I can't understand a word that she's saying. I look at these beautiful Syrian refugees. They're exhausted. They are exhausted. They've had to sleep with a mattress against a door so that she doesn't leave in the middle of the night. And why was she with them? Because she was having a beautiful friendship with one of the men. They're saying who was the guy that contacted us. So he will forever have a bed in our house, and just amazing people. Amazing.
Yeah, you don't dare think about what would have happened if she was in the wrong company, or even just sort of ordinary company where people don't go out of the way for other people they don't know that well, you know.
Why they didn't shove her out that door and let her go, I don't know. So when we get there, she's not speaking. We can't understand what she's saying. And we realise that we need to get her home. We need to get her home to care. So we book a flight for, I think it's within 2 days we're on a flight. So we get there on a Monday. On the Wednesday, we're on the way to the airport back. It was fortunate that we could have my oldest son, Jesse, who was in his last year of medicine, that came with us. And that ended up to be pure luck, because he had a week off his studies. And I'm a terrible traveller. I get anything sick. So we really thought that if I went by myself and the plane was turbulent, I would be in no state to look after anybody.
Yeah.
So it ended up to be brilliant, because we couldn't have looked after her by ourselves. You needed two people, so one could go to the toilet. Somebody needed to be with her 24/7. You couldn't let her go. When we got on the plane, if she got up to walk, one of us walked with her. When she went to the toilet, we went to the toilet. You know,
and there was a fear of self-harm, wasn't there? Because she talked about it just the one time, but enough to be really scary.
Yeah. So being a nurse, I had lectures in my nursing training a million years ago of mental health, but I didn't know about it now. I work in the operating theatres, and we do look after people with mental health concerns, but I don't look after them on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So I had no knowledge, even being a nurse, of what I needed to do. So all I knew is we needed to get her home and to care. So we did.
You know, it's a gripping book. When did the idea first come to you to write a book about what happened?
I think probably the first idea was not a book. It was to write an anonymous article. And probably 3 years out, so maybe about 2018, I thought, I'd looked back at all the text messages. We'd had a lot of WhatsApp messages to my sister and to my husband and my other kids. And I thought, gee, I've got enough to write an anonymous article, because we're remaining silent. Nobody knows that we have a daughter that has been through psychosis and then a diagnosis of bipolar. Nobody knows, because there is so much stigma around it that we were terrified of the reaction that she would have, that people would receive her differently. So about 3 years in, and then I realised that I had more than an article, but not enough for a book. So moving backwards, about 6 months after we got home, I'd actually said to Alice, why don't you put down the words that you have about what happened in Turkey and before Turkey and then after? Why don't you write that down? And she did. And she was able to remember it, which is amazing, but she's always had really good dream recall, and apparently that has helped. Yeah, that helped her. So her recall in the book is amazing.
It is what makes the book terrifying, because you are absolutely there with her.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting contrast of the hallucinations, delusions, I think would be the correct term, that are so lucid. It's terrifying.
Yeah. And when we were over there, she told us she had voices in her head. And my imagination or imaginings was that, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, she had hundreds of voices in her head. And to me, that is terrifying. And for her to be able to listen to us, I don't know why. So for her to be able to write in the book, to share her experiences for others to hear is such a positive for me, talking about mental health.
Absolutely. And the insights are just so rare. So from a medical point of view, in other families with someone who's suffering psychosis, it's a window into something that is little talked about.
That and that's it. It's a window because nobody talks about it. As a family, you can't, how can you out your loved one? How can I go and then say to, hey, Jess, oh, I've got a daughter with mental health. And, oh, now tell me about it. And then you walk away and then tell the next person and the next person and the next person. I have no right to share her story unless she gives me the nod and the wink. And that was probably after her diagnosis in 2017, after another psychosis of bipolar affective disorder. So when that happened, and probably a few months after that, I realised how alone we were as a family. That nobody talked about it. We didn't know anyone else that had anyone with bipolar in their family, schizophrenia, because we didn't share our news and other people didn't share theirs.
Yeah.
And so that's when we all had a great family conversation, and Alice was ready. Alice's friends knew, and a few of our friends knew, but as soon as we started talking about it openly, I can't tell you how many people and acquaintances, people that I didn't know, contacted me. And that's when the penny dropped, and I said to Alice, we could have a book. We could do something here. But right up until the very moment of publishing, if Alice wanted to pull the pin at any stage, even if I had 500 books sitting in my study, I would have pulled the plug. Once we pressed send, then it was out. I couldn't take it back. So I probably asked Alice 100 times, are you happy? Are you happy? And probably 5 times she said to me, Mum, can you stop asking me? I'm prepared. I'm ready.
That's wonderful. Have you got the cover next to you? I put it on my Kindle. I should have.
Yes, I have.
To this room. So this is Alice on the cover.
Yeah.
Which it's a compelling cover. And that is, can you tell us about the photograph that she sent you?
So,
and also for people listening, can you describe the cover for audio?
Of course. So Alice sent a photograph to me, and I received it. I was working in the operating theatres one morning, and I was at work, and it was about 5:45 in the morning. And I opened my phone, and there's a picture of Alice with thick black marker pen on her face, drawn all over it like a road map. And it took my breath away. I started to cry, and one of my fellow nurses came in and found me in the sterile stock room, and she said, what's the matter? And I said, I've just received a picture from Alice. And they said, Sarah, it can't be that bad. And I showed her, and she had no words. Her eyes were like saucers. She held my hand, and there was nothing I could do. So I rang my husband. I sent him the pictures, and he said, Sarah, there's nothing we can do. Remember, she's 21. She's doing stuff. That's it. That's okay. She's going to be okay. I didn't hear back from her for 24 hours, and I was terrified.
And a mother knows, you know.
That's it. So that is the cover of the book. It is chaotic, it is confusing, and it is frightening, but it is but one face of mental health. It is not the only face, is what I'm trying to say, but what you see on the outside is what's going on in the inside, pure and utter chaos.
And her eyes are covered with the book's title. That was also deliberate,
Yes, that's deliberate because I couldn't. The rest of the family, now the one that had the main tick of approval is, of course, Alice. That wasn't even on my radar to have this on the cover of the book. And I've given it to our designer as a, just so that when she read the book, I wanted her to have a picture that this was Alice. This is what we were going through. This is mental ill health. This is what we were going through. And clearly my instruction wasn't that great because she put this as one of the covers. And I was like, oh, my God, we're not having that. And the rest of the family were like, oh, my God, that's great. And I said, no way, no way. And then they said, but it's really good. And I said, no, I'm not having your eyes. I do not want you to be seen there on that cover.
Respect. Yeah, it is. It is.
So I covered her eyes, and then that was better. That was better.
I think it's an award-winning cover. It's a magnificent cover because it completely captures the tone of the book. Alice is a very beautiful girl.
Oh, she's lovely.
Was she a Miss Queensland or something?
Nah, never.
I think there was a line in your book. She was
no. She tried out for. So part of that picture, when she sent it to me, said she tried out for what's the show on TV, Australia's Next Top Model.
Oh, that's right.
She tried out for that, and she put on the bottom of the picture, how about I try out for Next Top Model now? And words just confound. Mental health can happen to anyone. Doesn't matter where you go to, where you live, what school you live in, what suburb you live in. Doesn't care what job you have. Doesn't care.
Did anyone else in the family have reservations about going public? Like, was it, there's degrees of enthusiasm. Were you all completely on board, or?
We were all 100% on board. It was, and maybe I think I was the driving force because as a parent, I was so alone and I could not find a book that had a perspective that I wanted to hear from. I couldn't find anything. When your loved one is going through mental health concerns, they throw everything. The medical system throw everything at them. But in 2015, it was around. I'm sure it was. We could not find anything for us. So getting that book out there was so important.
It is such a good book. And we should say it has your perspective, it has Alice's perspective, and it has Jessie's perspective. Jessie, almost doctor.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And it was important that I had somebody else's perspective in there that wasn't mine, because I felt maybe I might be biased in what I'm writing, but having Jessie's perspective there, in some cases, I think that he was probably more clinical than me, because he was more stating the facts, and he's really good with words, and Alice's words are amazing as well. So I think it all really gelled together.
Yeah, it really did. How did the writing process actually go about with 3 contributors?
So I ended up getting a writing coach, and that was a really good thing. I had a friend that was writing a book, so I then joined that. But the writing coach is more for thought leaders and workbooks. But it was, every session was amazing, and that was with Kelly Irving. Yeah. And it was so worthwhile that having a book coach, no matter who it is or who you get or whatever.
Yes.
So what I started with was 3 different perspectives, and then I've joined them all together in chronologically. So we're all sort of talking around the same time and about the same moment. Yeah.
And did you then read each other's chapters?
I did. Alice would just she just gave me everything. I just said, write it. So I then went and slotted it where I thought.
Yep.
And then I'd go back and I'd say, Jess, can you tell me about this bit, and can you write a bit more about this? Alice, are you able to write how you're going now, what you've done, what you've achieved. And I was able to do that. Yeah. So I was the one that collated it everywhere.
Yeah. Just on a side note of coincidence, my sister's name is Alice. She works in mental health with people who have psychosis. I am Jess, so we have a Jess and Alice. And my mum was an operating theatre nurse.
I love that.
So I was thinking the Alice and the Jess, and it was it sort of made it feel closer to my family as well. So I'll absolutely. She works for Eastern Health, so
I'd love her to read it. Yeah.
Yeah. So was there anything that you agreed not to include?
Nothing. Everything is in there. Maybe, maybe I didn't express my grief enough in there. I feel I didn't want to make the book so sad that people wouldn't read it, but when I would think about how close we were to losing Alice completely and the grief of not knowing whether we'd ever get her back again. When we brought her home, when they mentioned the words psychosis, okay, I could deal with that. When they mentioned the words schizophrenia and bipolar, that again took my breath away, because my knowledge of schizophrenia and bipolar was then, oh my God, will she ever leave home again? Will she ever get a job? Will she ever have a group of friends? Will this happen? Will that? My mind just went off in every direction it possibly could.
It's really scary. How is she doing now? Because the book travels a long way, and at the end of the book she's working and stuff. How is she now?
So Alice has worked since 2016, which is amazing in itself. She then in 2020 did a psychology degree, and then has now finished in honours, and she's got a second-class honours. So she'll be putting applications in for her masters. She's amazing. Amazing.
Has she, as the author, I see you are the face of Dear Psychosis.
Yes.
Has she done some public talks and things like that?
Yes. So she and I often do some library talks, and we do some talks for SANE mental health organisation, because we are the peer ambassadors, one of peer ambassadors, both of us. So yes, so we both do, and she is at her work where she works. She is their mental health queen. She's part of their team there, and amazing
experience.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. From a literary point of view, I did want to ask you. The book is called Dear Psychosis, comma. Can you? I just love it. Tell us about comma.
I love it that you actually saw that, and you're the first person to ever ask about it.
Oh, so, really? Yeah. I just thought this breaks so many conventions, but it's clever.
Yeah. Well, I said, this is not a full stop. This is part of her story. It's not the end of her story, and it's part of our story, and it's not the end of our story. So that was exactly why it's a comma. It's not a full stop.
And it's a Dear Psychosis. How'd you come up with the title? It's like a letter to. You don't expect the pairing of those two words.
No. So I have, probably like other writers out there, a book of titles for this book. We started off with Alice in Wonderland, and that stuck for a little while, and then I just went, it's so close to Alice in Wonderland that people will get so confused by it that it'll get lost.
Yes. Okay.
So that went out the door, and then I can't even remember what we had. And one day, or one morning, I woke up and went, I have it. It's Dear Psychosis. And so it has been ever since.
Yeah, so it has light bulb moments. But it is. We do have the discarded baby names for our books, don't we?
Yeah, that's it. That's
close, but not quite perfect.
Yeah, that's it. But when I had it, that was it. There was nothing else. I said to people, still give us, said to the kids and Shane, keep giving me names. No.
Yeah, because you stress test it. It's still keep giving me names, and do I still love it? Do I still love it? Yes, I love it more.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Now, I just can't believe that you didn't get a traditional publishing deal, because this is a groundbreaking book with insights previously unheard, especially the direct component, because so many factors came into play for you to be able to include them, you know?
Yeah.
Tell us about the publishing. And I have to say, you've been on the project and you've had heaps of mainstream media. So what happened with the publishing side of things? And damn, I wish you'd been my client and I had my business then.
I know. I wish I was too.
Yeah.
So the ASA have a pitch perfect that they do. So you can speed dating
with
and
literary agents.
That's it, and publishers. And so you can pitch to 2 at a time. So in April, I pitched to 2 publishers, and one of them said they'd love to read the book, and the other one said no, thanks. So I sent everything into this publisher to be never to be heard of again. So that
was a reply or acknowledgement.
I messaged her about a month later. I was very mindful of not inundating, and she said yes, I'm getting to it. And then I messaged again another month later, and again another month later, and got nothing.
That's unprofessional.
So then I did another pitch in the July. So 3 months later, I pitched again to 2 publishers, and one again said thanks but no thanks, and then the other one said yes, and then came back and said, so one of the questions during the pitch was, how's your social media? And of course I had about 300 family and friends, and he said, sorry, that's not good enough. And basically what he said was, you're not an influencer, you're not famous, and I won't be able to sell your book. And I was devastated, and I thought, how am I going to, this is it. This book is going to go into a drawer and never to be seen again until I heard of Anna Featherstone, who has the most wonderful self-publishing book out there called Look, It's Your Book. And if I hadn't have, it became my Bible. And if I had it at arm's length, I'd grab it. It is marked. I've got tabs on, I'd say 100 pages, if not more. And I've written in the book as well. And I'm not a writer I'm not a writer or a tabber, but this book is.
It's different. It calls for a different treatment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't have had this book, I would not have self-published. I would not.
Wow. Gosh, thank goodness for Anna Featherstone writing.
Yeah.
How was the experience? Did you find it stressful at any point, or did you find it fairly okay?
No, my husband was by my side when we were, getting it all in. And one of my friend's daughters had put his book on Ingram Spark. So she offered to help put ours on. So we did a Zoom. Right. And she went through everything, and we did that, and we put it on. And I found that so helpful. I was really loving someone holding my hand to do that.
Yeah.
And because it is a stressful thing getting it in there and out there.
Because the questions are sort of, do you want 55% discount? This is what bookstores would prefer. Do you want none? Do you want sale and return? Do you want return and destroy? Like, what are you supposed to know? And each decision can take so much time, and make the wrong decision. It's scary. Like, and also, what are the consequences of making the wrong decision?
That's it.
You don't know.
No, you don't.
Now, how was the reception? And can you tell us about how your episode on the project came about?
So pure and utter luck is how it happened. My husband, so we went through COVID lockdown, and my husband had been telling everybody that I was writing this book. But of course it was a manuscript, it was just a book. One of the baristas of the time had been a producer on the project.
Oh.
And because everything was locked down, he was in Sydney, they really didn't need, they cut down their people.
Sure.
So he became a barista. He was a barista. So he was just there working a bit and doing a bit of TV work, but working a bit and lockdown and stuff. Fast forward to the very day Shane had taken my book in for the first time to work. We'd received 5 copies from Ingram Spark.
Yeah.
He took it in. This guy happened to be back at the coffee shop, and the coffee shop boss said, "Hey Shane, my mate's here. That was on the project. He's actually starting work back at the project. Why don't you show him the book?" So Shane took it up to him and said, "Hey, Sarah's finished her book," and he took it from Shane and walked away. And he read a bit in the front and read the blurb, and came back to Shane and said, "I've contacted my boss. I start back at the project in 2 weeks. If Sarah might get a phone call in the next week or so." So Shane tells me this, and I go, "Oh my God, that's great." I'm in bed. It's 8 o'clock the next morning. I've got a day off work, and I open my email, and there's an email, and it says, "Hi, I'm so and so from the project. Really interested in your story. We'd love to contact you. Blah blah blah." I'm in my bed, and Harry, our youngest son, was walking out of his room, and I go, Harry, come and tell me this is real." That's how it started. Pure and utter luck.
Well, do you know what I'm going to do? After this call, I'm going to write to the BBC producer and tell her about your story.
Oh, how lovely.
BBC, I had one of those moments. I woke up, had an email from the BBC saying we'd like to interview Holly Dean Johns for Life Less Ordinary.
Yeah.
And I think they would love your story.
Oh, love that. Thanks, Jess.
Once you were on the project, did the media start to write to you, or were you really the driving force?
It was us being the driving force. We became, where was it? I really haven't received much more media from that. But we got on ABC Life Matters because a school friend of mine used to work at the ABC, and she pitched it to Life Matters, and they were wonderful and took it up. And from Life Matters, they talked about Sane, and then Sane contacted us through them.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how amazing as a non-fiction writer it is to receive emails and messages from people who've read the book.
Yes.
And the first time, and it wasn't the last time that I cried, was when somebody said that Alice and I, by writing this, had saved her life. So if you have got a non-fiction book out there and you want to write it, get it out.
Get it out.
Yes, will help you. Like, get it out there. Like, it is. If 100 people read it, and this is what we had to think, we were told if we self-publish, 250 people will buy the book. That's it. And you know what? I had to go, okay, I'm going to suck it up. This book needs to be out there. People need to know that they're not alone, that they're not grieving alone, that there are other people that have been through not the same thing, because it's never the same thing. It might be our journey's mental health. Your journey might be grief of death of a loved one. It might be being in prison for years. It might be our journeys are all so different. But people need to hear it and read it. And I have now probably sold just over 1,500 books, and I can't be prouder. Do I wish that I was in bookstores? Of course I do, but that's not to be. So I have to celebrate what an amazing achievement we have made.
And the book remains out. The thing is, some books, as Chris of Ingram Spark said, they have a huge number of authors, and they sometimes go stratospheric.
Yes.
And it may not be the first book, it may be the fourth. In your case, the story is so compelling that it can take off like a rocket. My professional advice would be that you should get a publicist like Nicole Webb to really get your book out there. And that's how you get the traction that you see Holly's now stocked in all the Dimmicks in Perth.
Wow.
So again, I'd like to connect you for consideration, because Nicole is not luck. Nicole is targeted. She's like a dog with a bone. She has a spreadsheet, and she will read your book, write a press release, and she will target the media that she knows will be interested in your book. Your book needs the attention that it deserves.
So my question then is, even if it's a year out?
It does not matter.
I love that.
Journalists don't care if the book's been out for a year. They want a story that audiences will be interested in.
Okay. All right. I'll definitely do that. That's wonderful advice.
Yeah, because to hear that it was luck, I assumed that you'd worked with a publicist. So the fact that it's happened despite not having a publicist, I'd love to see where you can take your book.
I'd love to see where it takes us, and I'd love you to see where it takes us.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful book. Your family, Shane, by the way, he sounds like a wonderful husband and person, and the strength of your family unit is really evident in the book. What would you, often with memoir, something has gone wrong in the family unit, and often it's the relationship could be damaged beyond repair. So I know the circumstances are different, but what would your advice be for someone struggling with this stuff as a memoir?
So I think you have to be honest to yourself. What do you want out in the world? Because once you put it out there, you can't ever take it back. And that's like the picture, the cover of our book. If I let the book cover go with Alice's eyes, I can't take that back, and I can't pull it back. If you don't want to talk about someone, then maybe you do everything under a pseudonym. Maybe you don't put your name out there like I did, which was a tussle, I have to say. Do I write under a pseudonym? What about Alice? Will this affect her forever? And will this affect her job? Will this affect her psychology? Will this? And we talked about it ad nauseum, and we decided that we would be, and I don't want to say the face of mental health, but for people to know that there are people that are willing to come forward and talk about mental health, rape, death, murder. It's empowering for others. It doesn't mean that you need to do it. So if you don't want it, you do the pseudonym. You write, and the names in your book aren't real. Or if you don't want Auntie Joan to know that she's in the book, don't write Auntie Joan. Say that it's a dear friend Maggie. Just change the names.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you have to emotionally, the purpose of writing the book is for you, it was very much to share, to not be alone, and so that someone could Google psychosis and find a true account of what the comfort and reassurance. Revenge memoirs are it's not coming from the right place, I think.
No, yeah, I agree that it's probably cathartic for you to write it, but is it cathartic to put it out there I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
And also in terms of sort of the consent, the showing, there's no surprises when the book comes out. You would also say that's really important for family, because it's also your family relationships.
Yes, yeah. And my family were 100% behind us. My brothers are both doctors, married to doctors. So they got a book at the end. They like black and white. Doctors love black and white. They love the information that you can give them. And not all doctors, that's a blanket statement, isn't it? But I didn't give them the book until it was published.
Why?
And I think it was the right time. They knew some, but they didn't know all. And my sister knew everything.
Yes.
Which was great. I needed her. And Mum and Dad didn't know a lot until it was published either. And I think that was right for them. They're 93 and 89. And I have to tell you, Mum has said that she's so sad that we've gone through this, but she's had immense joy in seeing the positiveness that it's brought, the positivity that it's brought to us as a family, but to others out there, like her friends included. Her book club read it. And I went to their book club and spoke to them. And it opened the door for older people. I went to Dad's probates and spoke to them.
Did you?
And I probably there were 40 people there, I'd say 15 of them had children that were suffering from mental health or grandchildren that were. And they loved it because they don't speak about it. That generation doesn't speak about things. So if for those out there that do have a book, do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You as a mum, I noticed an absence of judgment around drug taking because it was a drug-induced psychosis. You don't shy away from it, but there's no judgment. Was that conscious or unconscious?
No, it was really conscious. Shane and I talked about it, and don't get me wrong, we were very angry that she'd done it. But we also realised that she's 21. Yeah. Now, I would love a kid that wasn't going to experiment. I would love that. But as a nurse, I'd have to be, blind not to know that kids experiment with drugs, whether it be tablet form or in marijuana smoking form. Do I condone it? Absolutely not. Did I speak with Alice before she went away? Of course. Yep, of course. 100%. Watch out, don't take drugs, be careful if you do. And then when this happened, it really wasn't until we got back into not the PEC unit, which was the psychiatric emergency care unit. It was when she was in another facility that I realised, because Alice at every turn said that, yes, I could listen to what the doctors were saying. I could have information. The doctors could give me information. I was extremely lucky. Others aren't so lucky as that. But it wasn't until I went into this one meeting that I found out that she did take drugs, that she was smoking dope for a while before she left. Yeah. And I went home and I said to Shane, I'm really upset about this. And I'm sounding very calm talking about it here. Yeah. I'm really upset about it. But I feel that if we dwell on this now, it will take the focus on recovery. If I continue saying, I can't believe you did this, then she's going to be stuck in a loop. And her brain is already stuck in a loop from the psychosis. That I said we need to move forward. And Shane was in agreement. We needed to move forward. And it was 6 months later that I was able to say to, maybe not 6 months, maybe 3 months later, that I said to Alice, I'm really disappointed that, this is the case that happened. And I said, if this happens again, that you take drugs, because there's a high likelihood that you will have another psychosis if you do, then I can't go through this again. Emotionally and mentally myself, I would have been distraught and devastated, and I don't know whether we could do this again. And she said, Mum, I never want to do this again, and I am not going to take drugs. And she didn't. When she had her second case of psychosis, that's when the diagnosis of bipolar affective disorder was diagnosed. And then they could then track back to the first case of psychosis. The drug was the catalyst, the cause was bipolar. So we were able to then track back to that. And do I judge anyone else for how or what they do? No, it's a circumstance that we needed to move forward from. So we don't have shoulda, woulda, couldas in our house anymore. We have insight and foresight.
It is really scary though. Captagon is not a drug I'd ever heard of.
No.
And it's an amphetamine or something.
Yeah. So when we arrived home, nobody in Australia, well, I shouldn't say that, none of the doctors we spoke to had heard about it. And so they had to Google it.
Wow.
And what it is a drug that in Turkey or in Europe.
In Syria, I looked it up. A lot of
Yeah.
it is manufactured in Syria.
So the ISIS fighters and the Syrian fighters would take it to stay awake for days and days and days.
Wow.
So when Alice took it, it was an acquaintance of one of the Syrians told her that it was a drug, just like having a few Red Bulls, energy drinks, you know, it'll just make you feel great. So she thought, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And I think it was a quarter or a half a tablet she took. And our beautiful Syrians that contacted us were devastated that this person had given it. And they're not the keeper of Alice. Alice is the keeper of her. She made the decision. It wasn't anyone else's fault but hers. And she's had to, she lives and breathes by that she has to take full control of what she's done and in the future of what she does. So
in terms of, you know, raising public awareness about the link of cannabis and psychosis, because you were unaware, she said, oh, Mum, you know, I've smoked since I was 16. Medically, can you share what you learnt about that link?
I think, so my opinion of that is, and it's a personal opinion, so I can't share any other opinion than the personal one. And it's, I don't like marijuana. I do not like weed. I do not like any other name that it's called by. And I think that a lot of people, and that's a judgment again, people often with mental health concerns do use it to escape from what's going on in their brain and not realizing that their brain needs help from other means and other methods.
Yeah.
So that's, I think it's a tricky road to talk about unless you are of a medical background with that.
And what can be so harmless for many people with a certain genetic predisposition can trigger psychosis.
So actually the psychiatrist explained it really well. She explained that drug taking was, if we were all in the same room, there's 20 of us, we're all in the same room together, we all take the same drug, no matter what it is. We all take the same drug. 19 of us will be fine. One will have some sort of adverse reaction, whether it's psychosis, whether it's having a delusion of some sort for a couple of hours, or whether it's something ongoing. So it's a bit like Russian roulette. And that's my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell me about SANE, working with SANE? Do you feel like, what's kind of your involvement with them as a peer ambassador?
So that has been one of the most wonderful things to happen, and they'll invite us into the office and we'll listen to lectures. So there was a suicide support talk, which was absolutely amazing. And there's now they put our names forward to go talk to companies, to other places like that. And it's having awareness. So mine is as a parent and Alice's lived experience. Well, mine's lived experience too, but as a parent.
Yes.
Whereas hers is actually living with mental health concerns.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because anyone who's suffering mental health has a parent who, and suppose there's almost no support for parents.
I think there is more now.
Right.
Like there's Black Dog Institute, there's SANE, there's Lifeline, there's places that you can find. But as a parent going through it, you're like a duck. You're calm on the outside, but paddling madly on the inside, mainly to try and work out how to get your child or your husband or your mother or your father keeping their head above water. And that's where I think most carers, their focus goes on the person affected, rather than thinking of themselves. And that's when often we forget about ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to look after our own mental health and look after ourselves. Do something nice. Go out.
Yeah. Sure. You have fallen in love with writing books, haven't you?
Oh,
And you want more?
Yeah, so I'm 50,000 words in. Where's this little thing? 50,000 words in. I wanted to get up to 60 before so this is the first crappy draft, and then I'll go through it and fix up, and then I'm going to send to the editor.
It's fiction, right?
Fiction, yes. I don't have another non-fiction in me.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe Alice does. So
Yeah,
that'll be very interesting to see whether she could do that. She's just done a honours thesis, so she's over any study for the next 6 months. So she'll want to just live life for the moment.
Yeah.
But this book is I think it'll be sort of like a thriller mystery, maybe cozy mystery. There's there's a tiny love interest, but I can't write romance. I wish I could, but I just can't.
But it's cozy. That's what makes it cozy.
That's it.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
That's it.
That's what we were saying when we met. And I love your TikTok game. You're a great book talk ambassador.
Oh, yeah, it is amazing. So I can't work it out. Yesterday I posted one of going into work, and somebody had put on my computer, you've got this girl finished writing your book.
That. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. And how did that get 5,000 views? Like, it's just insane. Like, it really is.
The numbers are insane.
I'm loving Threads at the moment too. And as an author, you need to get out there, which is what you would tell people as well.
You sure do. I'm a little lukewarm on Threads, but I'm loving TikTok.
Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So where can people, your handle on TikTok is Sarah Martin Author, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And it's the same on everything, I think, on Instagram, on Facebook, and once you get to one, I think you can get to the others, I think. I don't know.
Okay, terrific. And is your book in audiobook?
No, and that's something that Alice, Jessie and I have talked about. It's a bit of an outlay. So that's, and funny that I was just thinking in the shower this morning that I might put out on TikTok and Instagram who would be interested in hearing Alice, Jessie and I.
We would all be interested.
I
have a person who can help you, and it's not the outlay you think it is.
If
can read your book at home,
yes,
he can handle everything else. I'll connect you.
I love that.
For a few $100s.
Oh, see, I've been quoted 3,500. So
you don't need to do that. You just, if you want the studio experience, that's fine.
Don't need it.
But nowadays you can get the quality that you need. I did my first audiobook in a studio for thousands of dollars.
Yes.
But I just think the royalties from audiobooks, it's got to be a good business proposition, right? For everyone.
Absolutely.
You can get beautiful clarity of sound. Holly, it's the person who did Holly's audiobook, and he's also doing Bruce Lowry. So let me connect you, because it would be powerful as an audiobook.
You are amazing. And I say yes to that.
Great. Okay. All right.
You were around when I was publishing my book.
Yeah, it's I'm glad I have been watching you for a while, so I was delighted to get it's the face-to-face meeting that you need to start a connection. But as soon as I saw your book, I didn't need to read it to know that it was an amazing book. So it's one of those books.
No, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you
for talking to us and sharing everything with us. I think listeners are going to, really enjoy this story.
Well, thank you for all your insight too. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening to me.
My pleasure.